So I have with me here right now Eric Pacifici. He is an attorney based in Florida, specifically an acquisitions attorney. You work for the SMB Law Group. You're a co-founder of that as well, and you went to Duke Law. Thank you so much for making time. So you have a very viral post that's going on right now on Twitter, talking about how you use ChatGPT in your daily usage. So first of all, talk a little bit about why you started that thread.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Chris. And the idea was ChatGPT and AI generally is something that we all need to obviously get comfortable with. I'm no expert on AI, and I'm certainly no expert on technologies. My partners would definitely tell you. Some days I struggle to turn my computer on, but it's no secret that our generation is going to have to get comfortable with these innovative technologies and AIs and understand Microsoft's got something in the works that's going to be built into the Microsoft suite here very soon. And so I tweeted something as a thought exercise, really just kind of having fun on social media, trying to make people think about daily uses for AI and for these new technologies, and it caught on.
And as I continue to read your thread, I thought it was interesting. I said I got to reach out to this guy because you talk a little bit, and you mentioned also as a proclaim, or excuse me, a disclaimer that equitable access to legal services is a problem, especially for people at low socioeconomic status. Um, with that, I mean, talk a little bit about how that's key in trying to help people at least get some basic um, ground information when they're trying to do a case that maybe they don't need to hire a full-fledged attorney for.
Well, and that's been a big thrust of the bar. And let me say one really important disclaimer here, Chris, that I want your audience to know is that, ChatGPT and these technologies not a substitute for a lawyer. You've got important matters. You need the right advisors, whether that's legal or otherwise. But, we have a problem with access to the law in this country, right? That's something that is no secret, I think, to anybody. So, anything that can come along and can create solutions. The use case that I tweeted out today as a thought experiment was around, the idea of a $750 dispute. If you've got a $750 dispute, it's going to be very challenging for you to go out there and find a lawyer who's cost effective, is willing to take your case, that wants to get involved in that level of dispute. We have small claims courts in this country for those purposes, but a lot of people don't know where to find that, how to find that. And so, the more we can start typing these type of questions in, I've got a $750 dispute. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. What do I do? And having something that's smart, give us those answers. I think that that's a benefit for all of us.
And you just made it clear that this is not a substitute for hiring an attorney, especially for big stuff. Hi, I was accused of embezzling. Like, maybe hire an actual lawyer for that instead of going to ChatGPT. Realistically, how broad do you think are the scenarios in which a person could use ChatGPT? You mentioned the 750 example, but could it be used for someone maybe who wants to draft up, I don't know, a lease for their tenant, etc.?
It could be, right. It's very good at writing letters. It's very good at text generation. As a lawyer, as somebody who works with words or any type of content creator, I think it's going to be very it's going to be very problematic and very beneficial and very involved in the next couple of years very quickly. Before it's going to displace plumbers. It's probably not going to do that. But I don't know yet. It's evolving very rapidly. Version 4 has just been released on ChatGPT, and it can do a lot more. You can create a lease very simply. So if you've got a small dollar matter, you can create a lease through it. You can take larger documents. It's very interesting. Take a large, complicated document, take a discrete piece of it, plug it into ChatGPT, and say, "Hey, explain this to me," and it'll break down for you exactly what it means. You could take chunks of documents or an entire document and say, "Hey, which of these elements should I be pushing back on? Which of these elements are what's missing in a lease of this nature? What is a landlord friendly provision versus a tenant friendly provision?" And ask it questions, and it'll give you thoughtful responses. Now, again, not a substitute for an actual attorney, but giving you things to think about. And one use case that I think was fantastic, that somebody responded to me and said, "Hey, this is never going to be a substitute for me for an actual lawyer. But before I get on with my lawyer, I'm going to run some thoughts through ChatGPT, have it create a framework for how I'm thinking about these issues so that I'm a little bit smarter and a little bit further along before I start running an expensive billable hour through a
And
lawyer."
And I will say that's the first thing that came to mind with me. You know, in my profession, obviously we write scripts and such, and I don't have a need for ChatGPT to write my news scripts. But if I'm interviewing someone, a lawyer, for example, and they're using certain legal terms and maybe they're not privy to the fact that they're using these terms, okay, well maybe later after I've done the interview and I'm listening to it, okay, ChatGPT, explain habeas corpus to me. Obviously, you could go to Google, but this does it in a way where you could be more specific about some of the terms you're using. Um, you said you use it daily. I'm curious, how do you, if you're able to talk about, how do you use it daily?
Well, first of all, we don't use it in our law firm or in my practice for anything that has anything to do with confidential information. This is a privately held company. We are not taking clients' confidential information and plugging it into anything, right? That's highly sensitive and not never something we would do. Right, but one example, but right before this call, I was drafting an operating agreement, and I typed in, what law governs LLCs in the state of Georgia, and it's the Georgia Limited Liability Company Act. It answers questions for you that otherwise, I would have in the past have to go to Google, and it's a lot clunkier. Right now, you still want to verify a lot of that information, and make sure that you're cross-referencing things the same way you would when you're preparing a news story, the same way anybody should when they're verifying something that somebody's told them. But it's very useful in answering those day-to-day questions and almost serving like a personal assistant one. A question I asked it yesterday. One of the laws in the prompt that I tweeted out as a thought exercise was you need to run a notice through a newspaper of general circulation in the county, pursuant to the Colorado law that I was researching. And I said, give me a newspaper of general circulation in Broomfield County, Colorado. I don't know what that is. And it gave me two examples. It gave me the contact information to the newsroom as to where you would contact them, the telephone numbers, everything, and the process. So it's very helpful in just answering those kind of miscellaneous questions.
Something you hit on that I think is so important to reiterate. You said verify, and I think some people are have misconstrued that ChatGPT is pulling a bunch of information. It's not perfect, but you still need to go through and verify this information. Is there almost like when you can go to Wikipedia? Yes, it's giving you a good example. This is information drawn by so many different people, but usually that comes from sources that are at the very, very, very bottom. So you still have to do that research and verify that what it's saying is doing it. So I think that's very critical that you said that. I saw a story that ChatGPT has passed the bar exam at one point. I think one of it, the uniform bar exam, scoring in the 90th percentile of test takers. I mean, when you hear something like that, does it encourage you with this technology? Does it make you like a little worried about it or what?
Well, I mean, you can't help but be worried, right? But the reality is, no matter what I do, no matter what anybody does, we're not putting the genie back in the bottle for this type of technology. You look at innovation throughout history, and I'm no technology guru, but look at the phone booth repair guy. You can bury your head in the sand when it comes to innovation like this, or you can embrace it. You can seek to adopt it. You can adjust your life to it. But what you cannot do is pretend like it doesn't exist. I mean, this technology went to 100 million users faster than any recorded innovation in history. The genie is fully out of the bottle with this type of thing, and if you embrace it now, you'll be in a much better position in the coming years than if you pretend like it's not existent.
Okay. And so even though you say that this isn't technology that is meant to replace like an attorney, do you foresee at the speed that this technology is developing that someone might use it to try to represent themselves in court?
I mean, you could try, right? If you wanted to craft legal arguments, it would be, I wouldn't advise that. Again, I would definitely suggest if there are, matters of significance, particularly criminal, high dollar amounts, really anything that involves the law, that you seek appropriate legal counsel. But there are people every day who represent themselves pro se in court and go in there with no help, right? And so the idea that innovation like this, may not have use cases like that, I think, isn't right. But there are already innovations like this, in the speeding ticket world and different areas of the law that are already, pushing the frontier of ethical questions around what is appropriate use of technology versus actual legal guidance. And so this is going to open up some new questions.
And one of those new questions, I'm not sure if this is something you've been following. Have you been looking into AI art at all and the questions on copyright with that at all?
I have
Familiar?
not.
Okay,
No.
okay, never mind. Well, that's something maybe we could talk about later. Essentially, um, the program Mid Journey. There's some other ones where basically it's using a bunch of images. Just, I mean, like so many images from the internet from different artists, and feeding it into it, and then creating original images that some people say is like, it's taking their art without consent. But if you don't know much about it, it's fine. We can move
Sounds
on
like
that.
something a Duke professor would be interested in writing about, but yeah.
I'll pick their brains. That's fine. So we talked a lot about, the things on your thread and such, but I want to know, you're a Duke grad. I'm curious, how could law students utilize this in their education, maybe even preparing for their careers?
Yeah, it's like having a smart assistant. I mean, this thing did extremely well on the LSAT. It did extremely well on the bar exam, right? And so, one of the things that I think is core to being successful in law school is learning to analyze laws and apply them to facts in a very sophisticated and deep way, right? And that's what you do when you take law school exams. It's one example. And if you're able to have a tool of this nature that you can plug in laws, plug in facts, and watch the way that it thinks about things, and learn to mimic that, and learn to think about the depth of analysis that this artificial intelligence can produce, if you can even get remotely close to that, you're going to perform incredibly well on those type of tests, in my opinion.
Eric, is there anything else I haven't asked you that you think just might be of interest to any of our viewers who might be watching this?
Well, I just want to reiterate, this is not a substitute for a real lawyer. You've got matters of significance, whether legal or otherwise. You need the appropriate advisors. Be very careful when using technology of this nature for confidentiality purposes. This is a privately held company. Anything that you're uploading or putting into it, can be retained by that company. But I think that this type of thing is something that folks should be engaging with, having thought exercises with, thinking about application to your job and your life, because it is coming, whether you like it or not. And so you can either embrace it, or you can go the way of the phone booth repairman and yeah.
I think different people just have different uses for it. I've used it to make a workout plan. I've used it to make a meal plan. So, but I saw your thread and I thought this is something people definitely should, hear a little bit more on. Eric Pacifici, again, co-founder of SMB Law Group, an acquisition attorney. Thank you so much for talking a little bit about your tweet. And I'm sure I'll be in touch with you soon, maybe for another story down the line.
Awesome. Thanks.